Senator Alex Antic, great to have you back with us on Flow.
Thanks, Ricky. Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year.
Yes, same to you. You were given a little bit of a different start to your Christmas holiday period, so detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. Is it fair to put it that way when you were heading back from Canberra?
That's a very good way of putting it. I was. Yeah, I did. I think it was 2nd of December through to about the 17th or something like that, 2nd or 3rd, and gave me a lot of thinking time. A very interesting experience, but we're back on deck now, and everything is well.
Right, and look, just where we're at now regarding the coronavirus pandemic, obviously the Omicron variant or subvariants still about the place, but it's been a flashpoint for you politically in terms of taking a stance regarding government legislation. Just outline your position as it stands going back to federal parliament next week.
Yeah, look. Well, thanks, Ricky. Look, it is. It's a thorny issue and it's a difficult one, and but of course, if anything in politics, they're the issues that we need to tackle. I mean, frankly, it's never easy, I think, to go against the flow. But I've got a pretty strong view about vaccine mandates and passports and some of these things that are incurring on our freedom. And it's easy to muddy the waters, I think, in terms of what this means for safety and security, but ultimately, people, in my view, should have an opportunity to choose what happens to them in terms of their own medical choices and their own medical care. So it's a pretty sticky issue for me, and it's not one which I'm really going to resile from. Myself, General Rennick from Queensland, it was the last sitting period last year, formed the view that we were going to withhold our votes from the government until the federal government, our own government, did something more to add some layers of protection for people from what we were broadly describing as vaccine discrimination, and that culminated with us crossing the floor and supporting a One Nation bill which was designed to do that, to try and provide some protection, but also we have said, we're so welded to this issue that we want to see something done before we supply that, or give that supply and confidence back on those legislative issues. So it's a big card to play, but this is a big issue, and it's something that that Australians, I think, are worried about and should be worried about, because it potentially has broader consequences than just COVID. I'm worried about the creep of big government into our lives, and I think I think many people are.
Well, without burying people in jargon, you and I are both former lawyers. You much more recently than myself. I understand BHP's been trying to get this vaccine mandate through, but the courts have been challenging it. As politicians, you can sort of run ahead of what the courts might decide by making sure there's a legal position on it.
Yeah, well, that's right, and that was what the intention of that bill. Try to put some protections in there in law, in legislation to mean that you couldn't be denied access to a supermarket if you'd made a different decision about your vaccination status, and you couldn't be sacked and you couldn't be moved on and those sorts of things. So that wasn't successful. Ultimately, I think there were 7 votes that voted for it out of a 70-odd, 75-odd total. So it didn't get the support it needed, but it's an important marker. Look, these ultimately are state-based issues. We're lucky here in South Australia that we haven't had some of the same issues that they've had in places like, say, the Northern Territory and Victoria and Western Australia. But the fact remains that, I think there are things that we can do at federal level to provide some pushback, and I think we should be doing them.
Now, on the crossbench, as it were, I guess, I don't know if we call you a crossbencher just yet, but Sam McMahon, the Northern Territory Senator, she's withdrawn from taking part in Nationals party room meetings over, I guess, more a pre-selection frustration, maybe more than anything else. Are you on the crossbench? What government legislation will you vote for or not vote for?
Well, look, I mean, that's coming up in the next few days. I mean, my position hasn't changed on that. I've made it very clear that I'm withholding my vote until we do something about mandates. So that applies to everything. There are a couple of, I suppose, pretty important pieces of legislation that coming up, that things like the Religious Discrimination Act, whether that will make it through or not, whether that gives any cause to reconsider that on a sort of a one-off basis, but. Yeah, look, I don't know much about Senator McMahon's position. I heard that reported, and I don't know what that does to the grand landscape either. I suppose that's a matter for her and for the last sitting period, so we'll have to wait and see there.
Well, I guess there's a chance, if you were to believe the polls, that with the way the government's travelling, that you've still got another term to serve as a senator, but you might be doing that on the other side of the chamber.
Well, look, I mean, I suppose you have to look back at the situation as it was 3 years ago. I mean, I think we started from a pretty similar position, and I think we've got, I think a good story to tell on many fronts. And look, the Prime Minister's a great campaigner, and things always tighten in the last few months, as they should, because there'll be a lot of scrutiny on the opposition and whether Australians want to take the risk, which, something, of course, I say they shouldn't. So we'll see. It's a long way to go, but the elections are always tight. So there's a lot of water to go under the bridge yet.
Yeah, now lastly, you just flagged religious freedom, and that may cause you to reconsider on a one-off case your voting stance regarding the federal government. It's been something the government promised before the last federal election, some reform on this front. It's sort of a watered-down version, I guess, to get something through the Parliament. Which way are you likely to swing on the way the bill looks right now?
Well, look, I think it's still going through the committee stage. I haven't caught up with that in the last week or so, but I think it was going through some committee work, and yeah, look, it has. I guess in one sense, these are a little bit like negotiations. Everyone has got their ideal view of what comes out the other end of the pipe, and we used to say in the law that a good mediation when everyone walks out miserable. That's a pretty bleak approach, but it is a little bit like this is a pretty tricky piece of legislation. There are lots of things in there that many would like and lots that many would like out. So we'll have to wait and see what it looks like at the other end of the pipe. But I don't know if watered down is the right word, but there's certainly been a lot of reworking of it. I mean, people need to remember this started several years ago and has been through expert panels and I think 2 consultation periods, and this is sort of the de facto third. So it's a lot of work that's been done on it, and I think it's important stuff. I mean, we need to give people protection, for their religious faith and the ability to practice it. So, it's in one sense, I think it's important to get something through, and it can always be built on and amended from there if that's the case. But it is an election promise, and it's something that needs to come through.
Well, I guess you're talking about laws coming through the pipeline. That process you just described reminds me of the famous words of Otto von Bismarck. There are 2 things people shouldn't see being made: laws and sausages.
Well, I often say that in politics, and it's probably true, actually. But it's an interesting process, but it's one that generally works. I think you need to have many hands on these bills to sort of hammer them out and get them through, and that's how the system's meant to work. So let's see what comes through.
Yes, absolutely. Senator Antic will watch with interest how the week plays out in Canberra next week. Thanks for joining us again on Flow, first time for 2022.
Thanks, Ricky. Great to be here and looking forward to chatting this year.